Napoleon Bonaparte, military genius, revolutionary, and emperor, rose from obscurity to dominate Europe and reshape the modern world. His journey from Corsican outsider to emperor of the French is a story of ambition, contradiction, and relentless pursuit of power. Napoleon's legacy is both celebrated and condemned. He toppled monarchies, inspired reforms, and left Europe forever changed. Join me as we trace the rise and fall of the man who became a legend. Born in 1769 on the rugged island of Corsica, Napoleon Bonaparte entered the world just months after the island was transferred from Genoese to French control. His family, though of minor Italian nobility, clung fiercely to their Corsican identity and traditions, instilling in young Napoleon a sense of pride and independence from an early age. The Bonapartes were not wealthy, but they valued education and ambition, nurturing dreams that reached far beyond their modest circumstances. Growing up, Napoleon always felt like an outsider, neither fully Corsican nor truly accepted as French. This sense of not belonging would shape his character, fueling both his determination and his drive to prove himself. Thanks to his family's connections and persistence, Napoleon earned a scholarship to a prestigious French military academy. But life there was far from easy. His thick Corsican accent and provincial manners set him apart from his aristocratic classmates, who often mocked and excluded him, whispering behind his back and making him feel even more isolated. Yet, instead of breaking him, this isolation only strengthened his resolve. Napoleon threw himself into his studies, excelling in mathematics, history, and military strategy. He devoured stories of legendary conquerors, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, dreaming of one day making his own mark on history. His relentless dedication paid off. At the École Militaire in Paris, he completed the rigorous officer training program in just 1 year, a feat almost unheard of, earning his commission as a second lieutenant at the astonishingly young age of 16. Despite his remarkable talent and early achievements, Napoleon still found himself on the margins of the French army. He was often overlooked for promotions and assignments, his Corsican roots and lack of connections holding him back. But he waited, watched, and prepared, knowing that history sometimes turns on moments of chaos. That moment arrived with the outbreak of the French Revolution. As the old order crumbled and the streets of Paris erupted in turmoil, new opportunities emerged for those bold enough to seize them. The revolution swept away centuries of privilege, opening doors for ambitious men like Napoleon who had long been denied their place. With the world around him changing, Napoleon was ready to seize his moment and step onto the stage of history, determined to rise above his outsider status and shape the destiny of a nation. The French Revolution shattered the old hierarchy, sweeping away centuries of monarchy and privilege in a wave of chaos and hope. The streets of Paris echoed with the cries of liberty, equality, and fraternity, as ordinary citizens rose up to demand a new order. In this turbulent environment, the rigid social barriers that once defined French society began to crumble, opening doors for those with talent and ambition, regardless of their birth. Among those who seized this unprecedented opportunity was a young Corsican officer named Napoleon Bonaparte. The revolution allowed him to rise on merit, not on noble lineage. His intelligence, determination, and military skill quickly set him apart from his peers, and he began to attract the attention of powerful leaders within the new republic. His breakthrough came at the siege of Toulon in 1793, a pivotal moment in his early career. There, Napoleon's innovative artillery tactics forced the British to withdraw from the strategic port, turning the tide of the battle. His success did not go unnoticed. He was promoted to brigadier general at just 24 years old, a meteoric rise for someone of his background. Yet the revolution was a time of constant upheaval. Political turmoil and shifting alliances nearly ended his career more than once. But Napoleon's tactical brilliance and unyielding resolve made him indispensable to those in power, and he managed to navigate the treacherous waters of revolutionary politics. In 1795, when royalists threatened to overthrow the government, Napoleon acted decisively. With ruthless efficiency, he ordered his troops to fire grapeshot into the advancing mob, dispersing the uprising and saving the Republic. This bold action earned him command of the Army of Italy, a post that would soon make his name legendary. In 1796, Napoleon took command of a poorly supplied, demoralized army and transformed it into a formidable force. Leading his men across the rugged Italian countryside, he outmaneuvered larger, better-equipped enemies, winning a string of astonishing victories. His leadership inspired fierce loyalty, and his reputation as a military genius began to spread. His dispatches from the front, filled with vivid descriptions of triumph and heroism, captivated the French public. Newspapers carried his name across the nation, and soon Napoleon became a household name, admired by soldiers and civilians alike. Napoleon's rise was meteoric. He was now the Republic's most celebrated general. Crowds cheered his victories, and his image appeared everywhere, from paintings to patriotic songs. He had become a symbol of hope and renewal for a nation desperate for stability and glory. The revolution had given him his chance, and he seized it with both hands, never hesitating to take bold risks or make difficult decisions. Napoleon's ambition burned brighter with every success, and he was determined to shape the future of France and perhaps all of Europe. His ambition, however, was only just beginning. Behind his steely gaze lay dreams of power and transformation, dreams that reached far beyond the battlefield. Napoleon was already plotting his next move, determined to leave an indelible mark on history. The stage was set for his next move, power in Paris. The city, still reeling from revolution, was ready for a new leader, and Napoleon was poised to answer the call. The world would soon know his name as Napoleon Bonaparte prepared to step onto the grand stage of history, forever changing the fate of France and the world. Returning from his campaigns, Napoleon found France in chaos and the government weak. In 1799, he staged a coup, dissolving the Directory and establishing himself as first consul. He promised order and reform, centralizing power and introducing the Napoleonic Code, which guaranteed legal equality and property rights. His reforms stabilized France and won him popular support. But Napoleon wanted more than power. He wanted a dynasty. In 1804, after surviving assassination attempts, he crowned himself emperor in a grand ceremony, taking the crown from the Pope's hands. The Republic was over, the Empire had begun. Napoleon now ruled France, and soon much of Europe. As Emperor, Napoleon unleashed his military genius across Europe. From 1805 to 1807, he crushed coalitions of Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. His Grande Armée, unmatched in discipline and speed, won legendary victories at Ulm, Austerlitz, Jena, and Friedland. At Austerlitz, he shattered a larger Austro-Russian force, cementing his reputation as a master strategist. Prussia fell swiftly, and Berlin was his. The treaties of Tilsit divided Europe between France and Russia, leaving Napoleon the undisputed master of the continent. Only Britain, shielded by its navy, remained defiant. Napoleon's empire was at its height, but new challenges loomed. His ambition would soon push him and Europe toward disaster. The seeds of his downfall were already sown. Napoleon's greatest legacy may be the Napoleonic Code, a unified legal system guaranteeing equality, property rights, and religious freedom. As his armies conquered Europe, they spread these reforms, sweeping away feudal laws and aristocratic privilege. The Code influenced legal systems from Italy to Latin America, shaping modern societies long after his fall. Napoleon also reorganized Europe, abolishing the Holy Roman Empire and creating the Confederation of the Rhine. He modernized administration, introduced the metric system, and built infrastructure. But his empire exploited conquered lands, fueling resentment and nationalism. In trying to unify Europe under French rule, Napoleon inspired the very forces that would destroy him. His reforms changed Europe forever, but at a tremendous cost. By 1812, Napoleon's empire stretched from Spain to Russia, but his alliance with Tsar Alexander I collapsed. Determined to enforce his will, Napoleon invaded Russia with over 600,000 men. The Russians retreated, burning everything behind them, leaving the French starving and exposed. After a brutal, indecisive victory at Borodino, Napoleon entered a deserted, burning Moscow. With no peace offer and winter closing in, he ordered a disastrous retreat. The Grande Armée was decimated by cold, starvation, and constant attacks. Fewer than 100,000 returned. The myth of Napoleon's invincibility was shattered. Europe prepared to strike back. The Russian disaster emboldened Napoleon's enemies. Prussia, Austria and others formed a new coalition, defeating him at Leipzig in 1813. Allied armies invaded France. Paris fell in 1814. Betrayed by his marshals, Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to Elba. But in 1815, he escaped, returned to France and rallied the nation for one last stand, the 100 Days. Europe united against him, and at Waterloo, Napoleon was finally defeated by British and Prussian forces. This time there would be no return. The Napoleonic era was over. His dreams of empire lay in ruins, but his legend was just beginning. Exiled to the remote and windswept island of St. Helena, far from the world he once ruled, Napoleon Bonaparte found himself surrounded by the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. The island, isolated and rugged, became his final prison, a place where escape was impossible and the outside world felt like a distant memory. Under constant watch by British guards, Napoleon spent his last years in captivity. The once mighty emperor, who had commanded armies across Europe, was now reduced to a life of strict surveillance and limited freedom, his every move monitored by his captors. His world shrank to just a few square miles, confined to the lonely estate of Longwood House. Yet even in exile he was not entirely alone. Loyal followers, friends, and a handful of devoted servants remained by his side, sharing in his isolation and reminiscing about the days of his lost glory. During these years, Napoleon turned to writing. He poured his thoughts onto paper, crafting memoirs and letters that would shape his legacy for generations. Through his words, he sought to present himself as a misunderstood hero, a visionary leader, and a champion of the ideals of the French Revolution. In 1821, after years of declining health, Napoleon died on St. Helena, likely from stomach cancer, at the age of 51. His final days were marked by pain, reflection, and the company of those who had remained loyal to him until the end. Years later, his remains were returned to France in a grand procession, and he was entombed with honor in Paris at Les Invalides. Napoleon's legacy is a subject of endless debate. He was both a dictator and a reformer, a conqueror and a modernizer. He spread revolutionary ideals across Europe, but this came at an immense human cost. The wars he waged left millions dead or displaced, and the suffering of soldiers and civilians alike cast a long shadow over his achievements. Napoleon redrew the map of Europe, toppling old regimes and inspiring new ideas of nationalism and self-determination. His influence shaped the destinies of nations, for better and for worse, and the effects of his actions are still felt today. Love him or hate him, Napoleon's impact on history is undeniable. He remains a figure who fascinates, provokes, and inspires debate among historians and the public alike. To this day, Napoleon stands as one of history's most complex, influential, and enduring figures, a legend whose story continues to captivate the world.